In this video, we will be discussing NSUserDefaults. The NSUserDefaults class allows your application to store user preferences as well as other information. NSUserDefaults does three things. It allows you to register out-of-the-box settings for your application. These are your factory defaults that the application will go back to when set to factory settings. You can save the changes a user makes to these settings for storage and later retrieval. And lastly, you can read the values from the saved data. Preference files are stored in plist files, which have XML format. They are located in the user's home folder under Library Preferences. Your preference file is named based on the bundle identifier of your application. You can set this value in the info plist, and that is exactly what we'll do in our next application. The example here shows a reverse domain format. We use com, then dot, the company name, and then the application name followed by the extension plist. This naming convention works well and also aligns all your plist files together in a Preferences Finder window. There are several different preferences on your computer, and these have a precedence and order that they're executed in. The first one is arguments on the command line. Now, very few people use the command line anymore to start up programs, so this is rarely used. Next is the application, and these are the values that the user sets within your application. We have global, and these are the global settings that your user has set. And then language, these are the user's language settings. And then lastly, the registered defaults. These are your out-of-the-box settings for your application. So let's go on over to Xcode, fire it up, and start a new application. Before we start this project, I wanted to show you what the finished application will look like and what it's going to do. So here it is. We're going to create an application that has a text view, and we're going to list URLs, one URL per line. And when we click the Open URLs in Browser button, these will open up in Safari, because that's my default browser. And there we can see it opened them up, and I have my preferences set to open up new windows and tabs. So we have Alan Craig opened up, and VTC.com opened up. Okay, so I've launched Xcode. I'm going to create a new project. I'm going to choose Cocoa Application. And I'm going to name this Defaults Example. So the first thing as usual is to come over to the Classes folder under Groups and Files and choose our Defaults Example App Delegate header file. Now, if you remember the example that I just showed you, we're only going to need an NS text view. So we're going to do IB outlet. And I'll just call this one text view. And then we need an action to connect to our button. And I'll call this one open websites in browser. And I'll copy that, use Command Option up arrow to get to the implementation file. This is all normal, we've seen this before. So now that we're set up to write our code, let's go over to our resources and double click on the main menu nib file. And let's go ahead and lay it out. So I'll grab a button, drag it on. I'm going to go over to Inputs and Values and get a label. And I'm going to grab a text view. Drag that out. Now the text view, we want it to resize with the window. I'm going to click the vertical and horizontal bars. I'm going to grab the button, drag it up. It needs to be anchored to the bottom right of the window. And then I'll resize the window. Go ahead and name the button there. And we can start connecting everything up. So I'm going to control drag from the button to my instance of my class. Choose Open Websites in Browser. And I'm going to drag from the class up to the text view. and then I'm going to choose text view. All right, we have everything hooked up. So let's save this and we'll go back to Xcode and we'll start writing our class.